In one voice, our nation must condemn racism, bigotry, and white supremacy. These sinister ideologies must be defeated. Hate has no place in America.
Welcome in tonight's panel, Senior Fellow at the London Center for Policy Research. She's also a former Marine Gunnery Sergeant. Jessie Jane Duff, also with us, Democratic strategist and former Obama campaign field director Robin Biro. Thank you both for coming on tonight. First to you, Jessie. Former Congressman and 2020 hopeful Beto O'Rourke, who is a native of El Paso, had arguably the strongest rebuke of President Trump in the aftermath of these attacks. Here he is taking questions from reporters while you could clearly see his frustrations boiling over.
Members of the press, what the hold on a second. You know, it's these questions that you know the answers to. I mean, connect the dots about what he's been doing in this country. He's not tolerating racism. He is promoting racism. He's not tolerating violence. He's inciting racism and violence in this country.
Now, Jessie, if Beto's objective is a background check, a comprehensive background check, or any other this legislation you hear Democrats talking about, do you think he advanced his cause any by taking that tone?
Well, of course not. You know, to go after the president is like us suggesting that President Obama was responsible for the 24 mass shootings, major mass shootings that went on under his administration. I mean, we're looking at a Black Lives Matter rally where a shooter came out and shot cops. That was a mass shooting. How about Orlando, where gays were essentially targeted and murdered? How about the soldiers on Fort Hood? I mean, let's just stop this nonsense, because to suggest that who's in the White House is a racist and that is the cause of this, when you go and look at what these shooters have promoted on their own social media website, they have shown exact opposite. The one in Daytona was promoting Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren, and yet Bernie came out and called the president a racist. Well, the shooter, Dayton, I'm sorry, yes, in Dayton. And then the shooter in El Paso was showing to have leftist ideology and Democratic registration. So, you know, I'm sorry, folks. I mean, I know that you just love to pin this onto the president, but the fact is this president has not promoted one single racist agenda. When you look at what he's done for prison reform, unemployment numbers among African Americans. I mean, we keep saying the same thing over and over again, but all the Democrats have now is a name-calling rhetoric versus solutions to this type of mass shooting that has been on the increase since 2000.
Yeah, and, you know, Robin, when you look at this, I think according to Pew Research, something like 72% of America favors universal background checks. Don't you think Democrats, I mean, with poll numbers like that, you think that there would be a way to get this done, right? And Democrats, would they want to lead the charge on this? When they have 72% of America on their side, if they still can't get it done, don't you think it's rhetoric like we're hearing from Beto and then also Kamala Harris using the event to raise money for her campaign? Don't you think those types of actions actually put this legislation further back?
No. And the reason why is that we are getting it done, John. That bill was passed by the Democratic majority House. It's stalling with Mitch McConnell, Moscow Mitch, who refuses to advance any of our issues. He's proudly proclaiming himself the grim reaper of any Democratic legislation. You yourself just showed that this is widely supported by the American public. This was a bipartisan bill with very good concrete reforms that I can get behind as a veteran, as a gun owner and concealed carry permit holder myself. I agree that the only real loopholes are in private person-to-person sales as far as gun sales go. This bill addresses that. This bill reforms background checks. It's even NRA is on board with some of these reforms. But Mitch McConnell is more interested in confirming federal judges than he is actually passing laws that will keep Americans safe, John.
Well, the frustration was clearly felt, that frustration you're talking about with Mitch McConnell. Here is Democratic Congressman Tim Ryan. He says it's time for Congress to take action, including specifically Mitch McConnell. Here he is.
Mitch McConnell needs to get off his ass and do something. People are getting killed in the streets in America, and nobody's acting. Nobody.
Now, Jessie, McConnell also got a ton of criticism on social media, over 100,000 tweets that use the hashtag Massacre Mitch instead of Moscow Mitch now since the shooting. What are your thoughts on what Tim Ryan just had to say there?
Well, I personally think that Mitch McConnell has nothing to do with this shooting. I think that there is a lot of deflection going on. I personally have not, in full disclosure, have not read the bill, but I do know that there's a lot going on that would limit personal carry in some of these legislations that Democrats have wanted to put forward. Not knowing exactly what's in this bill, but let's look what happened to veterans who were defined as mentally defective by the VA because somebody else had to handle their finances. Sweepingly, many veterans were not allowed to purchase firearms, and it wasn't until just last year that we reversed that. Let's be careful about what we start suggesting is going to be wonderful reform when you're really not understanding why this could be potentially getting blocked by the Republicans. And I would say very carefully, the Second Amendment right is something we either defend or we do not. And if we're going to keep chipping away at the rights of gun owners and chipping away at the right to carry, then we are going to sit there and watch other shooters come in. Because guess what? When you take away people's guns like mine or limit my purchase, that means the crooks still have theirs. This shooter, the last two shooters, regardless of how they received their weapon, they were maniacal, evil men. Now, let's get to why we have this problem among our population where people feel a mass shooting is the way to go about their problem. Do you think, honestly, more laws are going to stop that? How many laws were broken? Not to mention murder is against the law. If we keep thinking that lawmaking is going to solve this problem, we're missing the mark. Our society has seen a steady increase in this. Why? When I was growing up, we used to have skeet shooting in high schools. We used to have people with gun racks on their cars. Guns were not the problem. What has happened since then? In fact, we had more guns possibly in the community, and they were widely accepted.
We heard President Trump talk about some other potential causes, what may be contributing to this increase of violence we've seen with these mass shootings. You know, he talked about video games, talked about the lack of mental health care in this country, and we all know, we've talked about this too on this program, how the federal government shut down a lot of these mental health facilities, these, you know, state-run hospitals that used to exist.
Oh, yes.
Now those people are housed in prisons and they go through the cycle of recidivism and they're back in prison, back out on the street. That's an issue. But what do you think about that as potential causes, Robin, this video games and mental health? Do you think the Republicans are using those as a distraction from what the real issue is?
Yeah, there was a research study that was just done that only 20% of Americans agree that video games are the problem. Let's be honest here, and I'd love to know Jessie Jane's take on this. There was a study that just came out that showed that look what happened when George W. Bush was president during 9/11. He went to a mosque. He was in that mosque and said, these people are not the problem. Terrorists are the problem. It's not Muslims. Look what happened when Donald Trump put in the Muslim ban. Hate crimes against Muslims increased 400% that week. These are direct correlations to what he says and does that inflames these people. When he said that there were very fine people on both sides in Charlottesville, we had a 10-year spike in hate crimes directly related to the rhetoric that he says. What he says is so inflammatory that it sends out the fringe elements to do these crimes. And I'd love to hear Jessie Jane try and defend that.
Jessie Jane?
Okay, Robin, you first of all misquoted what he said in Charlottesville, and I'm very sorry. I really love you, but that was wrong.
I love you too.
know he did not say there's nice guys. You did not complete the entire quote, and that is misrepresentation, and you're somebody who's always been fair about stating the entire quotation. You know that he went on and he denounced it. Let me finish, Robin. Robin, let me finish. I do not interrupt you ever. I really have a lot of respect for you. I really do. Listen, when he spoke out at Charlottesville, he went out and said that the Nazis and white extremists are wrong. He said it. He said it multiple times. If we're going to say there were fine people on both sides and not complete the quote, then we are misrepresenting exactly what the president said. That is fraudulent. As far as what happened with George Bush speaking in the mosque, guess who was standing over his left shoulder? The director of care, who was tied to Hamas. That was an obvious misrepresentation on what they were doing in that mosque. When you have people that are active terrorists or supporting terrorism that are standing there trying to say that, oh, we're all good people, yet you have a former terrorist director right over your shoulder and don't even know it, that was a foolish move on George Bush's part. When President Trump came out and spoke about, let me finish, I let you finish. When President Trump spoke about Muslims, he has also modified exactly what he has said over time. So don't sit there and tell me and misquote things because you just dislike him.
And Jessie, I apologize. That was me jumping in there. But I wanted to ask Robin this question. You heard President Trump condemn white supremacy and condemn this violence today. He's done it in the past. But what you don't hear as much from Democrats is condemning the violence of Antifa. I know you do that, Robin, and that's why we have you on the show, and we respect you. But you don't hear the same kind of condemnation coming from other Democrats for the violence that Antifa creates.
Yeah, and I've condemned them multiple times. Nancy Pelosi did too. I can't remember the exact language that she used, but she emphatically denounced them. Look, let's be honest. There have been 0 killings by Antifa. What they do is very reprehensible. I don't support them at all. I've had to deal with them like a plague in my party. I extricated them for the last 3 years. I've been working to.
But let me jump in here again, Rob. We're going to go to a break. I don't want to cut you off too much, but I think what most people don't understand is we're just not even 48 hours really removed from these attacks, and already Democrats are blaming Republicans, Republicans are blaming Democrats, and nobody's really talking about the actual shooters in this case enough, other than the police at these news conferences. And that's what's, I think, so hard for most of America to really accept. In these moments of tragedy, the blame goes for the other political sides as opposed to where it belongs, and that's on the person responsible. Jesse and Rob are going to come back. We do got to go to a commercial break.